Right. So you guys should all have your quizzes back. Don't stress out too much about the scores. The basic 13, it's something that we're gonna work up towards, and eventually by the end of, I want to say today and tomorrow, you should be able to handle those with no problems. Right, so don't get hung up on the scores. I'm just gonna do all of them right here, right now, and open up to any questions just to keep things quick. Okay, so over here I made an HTML document. I opened it in the browser. So I have a script tag here in the head, right? So anything I type in the script tag, it's going to reflect on my console in my browser, okay? So here, let's go ahead and do the first one, right? So what is the first one? Print 1 to 255, right? So let's make a function. Let's say 1 to 255, and we are going to, well, here, let me show you guys a trick, right? So in JavaScript, when you write functions, we can make it an anonymous function, meaning that we don't give it any name, okay? Now, what happens when we want to run this function and it has no name, right? Let's say inside of this function, 1 to 255, like that, right? If I run this, it's not going to, right. That's weird.
You don't have a name for the function?
Right. That's fine though. I mean, let's see if this will work. If I call the function right afterwards. There we go. Okay, so you can't have this unless you call the function. So this was what I was going to tell you guys about. So when I declare a function, if I don't give it a name, there's no way for me to access that function later on when I want to call that function from some other line of code, right? But what I can do, in this case, I'm going to do this because it's faster. I'm just going to write a function, and right after I declare the function, I'm going to run the function. Okay, so this will work because I'm defining it and I'm just running it right after the definition. So I'm only using this function one time, right? So if I want to use it many different times, then this will not work because I can only do it one time, because otherwise I can't access it later on, right? But for the sake of this demo here, we're just going to do it like this, okay? So print 1 to 255, right? So here, let's say we're going to make a for loop. So for variable I equals to 1, right? Because that's the first thing I want to print. As long as I is less than or equal to 255, I want to keep going. And every time I'm done with one iteration, I'm going to increment I by 1, right? That's the shorthand for incrementing by 1 is the plus plus, right? So inside of this loop, all I want to do is console log I. All right, so save that. Let's run this. Boom. It's logging 1 to 255. Okay. Now, I'm going to comment that guy out. All right, over here, we're going to do the second one. Print odds. Right. So we're gonna. You know what? I think it's better if we're gonna give these guys names, right? So let's say 1 like that, and then we're gonna run this function like that. Okay. So did the same thing, nothing changed, right? But as long as I comment this guy out, this is not gonna run, right? So there we go. So here we're gonna do the second one. It's gonna be print odds 1 to 255. Like that. So we're going to write function 2, and here we're going to do the same thing for the for loop, right? For var I equals 0, I will be less than or equals to 255, right? And then I will be plus plus. Now, this is exactly the same as what I had before, starts at 0. I can do this a few ways if I only want to console log the odd values. Okay, so I can either have this modular operation to see if the number of I is actually odd, or I can have something like this where I start at 1 because that's the first odd number I see. And then every time I'm going to increment 2 instead of 1. Okay, so that way it's I equals to I plus 2. Like that. So it is equal to whatever it was before plus 2. Okay, so if I log I and I run this function here, I should see all of the odd numbers being logged out, right? So another way to do this is to, let's comment this guy out. So that's the first way to do it. The second way to do it, for var I equals to 0, I is less than or equal to 255, I plus plus, right? So this will iterate through every value from 0 to 255. Here I can put an if condition. If I mod 2 is not equals to 0, then I know that there's a remainder when I divide by 2. So therefore I know that it's odd. This is a not equals to, right? So this not equals to means that it's not equal to it. So double equals means that it is equal to it. Exclamation point equals, this is a not operator. Yeah.
If you had exclamation point and double equals, would that still work?
Like this?
Yeah.
Yes, it will still work. That's the difference between the double and the triple. It doesn't really matter though for this case. So this case, I'm going to console log I. And if we run this, we should see that it's exactly the same, right? Now remember what we said about the truthy values, right? So we know that 0 is a truthy value. We know that anything that's not 0, that's a number, is also a truthy value. So if this guy is going to be an odd number, then this will be a falsy value because it's going to be 1, right? So therefore this will not be evaluated. But what I can also do is I can put a exclamation point in front of it to do the opposite of whatever this guy evaluates to, right? So that will give me the same result. Or I have to do this. Yeah, there we go. Oh, this is the, okay. So this is the evens. So I guess it's like, that, there we go. That's the odd. So if this is true, I'm going to console log the number. It's going to be true if it's not equal to 0, right? It doesn't evaluate to 0. Any other number that's not 0 is a falsy value, right? So, or it's a truthy value. If it's 0, then it's false. If it's not 0, then it's true. So therefore, it's true, so I'm going to console log that. So all of these guys are still odd. Okay, so those are different ways. Yeah.
So you don't even need to write the 0 then.
Yeah, because it's either going to be 1 or 0, right? Because when you divide by 2,
Right.
it's either going to be a remainder of 1 or no remainder, which is 0. So if it's 0, it's going to be false.
Because 0 always equals.
Because 0 is a falsy value. 1 is a truthy value. So therefore, I don't even need to write that. This will work, right? That's the point, okay?
So you could put any number, like instead of 2, you put like 4.
Yeah, you could.
It'll just be true.
Yeah, that's the truthy. All integers except 0 are truthy values, okay? Okay, so that's number 2, right? Let's get rid of the space here, comment that out. All right, so third one, print int and sum 0 to 55, right? Function, let's say 3 this guy is asking me to print all the integers and the sum so far from 0 to 255, right? So from 0 to 255, I'm just going to copy this for loop here. This will iterate from 0 all the way to 255, right? So before that, I'm going to create a variable called sum, and I'm not even going to set that sum. Or I'm going to set the sum equal to 0 to begin with, right? It's because we want the sum to start at 0 and start adding up as we go. So every time in this loop, I'm going to make the sum equals to the sum plus I. And then all it's asking me to do is print out the value and print out the sum. Right? So now if we run 3, we should see that, oops, what is that?
Function is
Oh.
C to C.
Yeah, thanks. There we go. So the first numbers we see here are the values, and as we go down, you see the value and then the sum so far. That's what it's asking me to do, right? So we can also write this in this format, right? So remember when we said we can chain things? So let's say I console log, this is the int, or like that. Let's say I, and then we can say, then we want the sum to be the sum, like that. So a space here, there we go. So we ran that, this makes it a lot clearer, right? So the integer, and that's the sum, okay? So that is the third one. Let's go down to the fourth one. Function for, let's see, iterate and print array. So this time we're passing in an array when we call this function, and all it's asking us to do is write a for loop for I equals 0 as long as I is less than array.length. Then I'm going to continue, then I++. This is the syntax you'll see. Arrays will have a length, meaning that how many elements are inside of that array. Arrays have indexes, right? And we're going to get into arrays a little bit more later on. But know that arrays have indexes, and the index starts at 0 for the first element, and then it increments by 1 every time. So whatever it is, the length of the array, there is length minus 1 indexes, because the index starts at 0, but lengths start at 1. Because if you have one thing in the array, the length is 1, right? So therefore, as long as the I, which is the index that I'm looking at, is less than the array.length, or I can say if it's less than or equal to array.length minus 1, but typically we want to save time by not writing so much code. So we do I is less than array.length. Then it's asking us to print the array values. So log array of index of I. Okay? Now if we're calling this function, we have to give it an array. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. We run it, we'll see that it console logged the array values, right? So if we change one of these guys, we'll see that we're logging the values in each index. Okay? Right. So that is number 4. Let's go to 5. So 5 is asking us to find and print the max. All right, so we're given an array as a parameter, and we will find and print the max. So we're making a variable, assigning it a name called max, and we're going to set that to array of length of index 0, the first element in that array, right? And the reason why I want to do this instead of making this 0, which some of you guys have done, is because if you make it 0 and there's negative values in the array, it won't, it won't become the min, or there's issues when you have negatives, right? So we want to make this guy the, what is it? array of index 0. So whatever is the first thing in the array. And then I will just do my for loop starting at 1. So, and then the same thing, I is less than array.length I plus plus. And then if the array of index I is greater than my max, then the max will be equals to this array of index I. Okay? And at the very end, it's telling me to find and print the max. So after this for loop is done, it's iterated through all of the array values. Whatever is the max should now be stored in my variable max. So I can console log max, and it should give me the maximum value. So let's run this function. We're going to give it an array. Let's say 1, 55 to 67. So, and maybe we can give it like 7 here, just to kind of scramble it up. So it should be console logging 67. Yeah, 67. Right, so that's where this guy is doing. Right, so that's number 5. Let's go to number 6. This guy is, oops, I forgot to write these descriptions. So this one is iterate through array. This one is find max. Right, this one is get and print average. So print average. Right, we're making a function. This one is 6. We're given an array, and we're going to find the average of it. Okay, so in order to find the average, we need the sum of all of the values. Right, so we create a variable called sum. We're going to set it to 0. We're making a for loop to iterate through the array. I equals 0. I is less than array.length I plus plus. And then every single time inside of the loop, all I'm doing is making the sum equals to the sum plus I, or array of I, array of index I, right? Because we want to sum the values inside of the array. So now that we have the sum, all I need to do is console log the sum divided by the array.length. Right, so that will give me the average. So if we run this guy with the same array, we call this guy 6, then we should see the average being printed out, 26.4, right? That's how we would do the average. Right, let's see, what is the next one? We're almost halfway done. Array with odds. Okay. So create an array with all of the odd integers between 1 and 255. Let's say 7 here. We're creating an array, so we're not being passed in an array, but we have to make an array variable now that is an empty array, right? So we're going to loop through all of the odds, right? So we did that back up here where it was print odds over here, right? So we can copy this for loop because we know that this for loop will give us all of the odd numbers, right? So instead of console logging I, we're going to array.push, meaning that we're adding into this array. And notice that the parentheses, that's meaning that array.push is a function, and it pushes the I into that function. What else does it say? 1 and 255. It doesn't say anything, so we can literally just leave it like that. But just for the sake of demonstration, we're gonna console log this array to take a look at what it is, right? So 7, run that function. We're gonna comment this guy out. There we go. We have an array of 1 all the way to 255. You can't see it, but it's like ... But that is the solution. All right, let's go to number 8. This guy is square the values. Now, a lot of you guys got this one right. It's pretty simple, right? So function 8 we're given an array, and we are going to iterate through that array, and we are just going to square the values inside of each element, right? So here we're iterating through the array, and all we're doing is changing array of I equals to array of I times array of I, right? So we're squaring the value, and at the end of the day, if we log the array after this for loop is done, then we should see that all the values are squared. Okay, so we're going to copy this guy. This is 8. And if we run this, we should see all the values squared. Okay, so that is squaring the values. Let's go do the next one, which is greater than y. Right, so we're writing a function 9. We have an array that's given to us and a second parameter called y. Okay, so we have an array, and we're going to first create a variable called count. I'm going to set that to 0, and we're going to iterate through the array. And each time we find a value that's greater than y, we will increment this count, right? So if array of index of I greater than y, then the count plus plus, incrementing the count. At the end of the day, we will log this count to see how many of them are greater than y. Okay, so we're going to use this array again. This is 9. That's the first argument. This is the first argument. This is the second argument, is the y. Let's see how many of them are greater than, let's say, 8. Okay, so in this case, this is greater than 8, that's greater than 8. We should be expecting to see 2, right? So that is greater than y. Now, let's see, 0 out negative numbers, right? 0 out neg. Okay, so make a function. This is number, oops, is it 9? Yeah, it's 10 now. So we're given an array with some negative numbers in it, and we're going to iterate through this array, and every time there is a negative number, so if array of index I is less than 0, that means it's a negative number. I'm going to make that array of index I equals to 0. Right? Yeah, we're setting all of the negative values to 0. After we're done with this for loop, we're going to log the array again, and we're going to see, once we run this function, 10, let's say negative 55, negative 67. If we run this, we should see those guys be 0. Okay. All right, so that is 0 out neg. Let's go into the next one. Min max average. Almost done here. Okay. Function 11. We are given an array. Now we want the min, max, and average. We already know how we get the max, right? So we need to create the variable. Let's say min. We're going to set that equals to the array of index of 0, first thing in the array. We're also going to create the same variable called max, set it to the same thing. And we're also going to create, let's say, average, or not average, but the sum. And we're going to set the sum equals to array of 0, the first element. That way, when we start our for loop, we can start at var I equals 1, right? And then it's going to be the same thing over here. This will iterate through the entire array from 1, the element of index 1, all the way to the end, right? So now we have a few different conditions we need to check. So if array of index of I is greater than the max, then we set the max to be equals to array of index I. this is an if statement we want to evaluate. Another if statement we want to always evaluate, and the reason why I'm not chaining it together is because I always want to check this again, even if this is true. So if array of I is less than min, then I'm going to set the min equals to array of I. Okay, so these two will both get evaluated always. If I chain them together, then one of them might not happen. Okay, so those are the checks, and then in addition to that, I'm going to make the sum equals to the sum plus array of index I. Right, and at the end of it, I will just console log the min is, let's say the min here, and then space max is the plus max, and then space average is going to be the sum divided by the array dot length. Okay, maybe you want to make this guy evaluate on its own. So now, if we, let's see if this will work. This might not work, but let's run this. We're giving it an array. Let's say 3, 6, 9.
You misspelled the max on the top.
Okay, thanks. All right, so cool. Let's say 10. All right, so let's see. Min, max, average. So it works out. So we can do these calculations within the console log itself. Right, that's what the algorithm is asking us to do. Cool. So next one, almost there. 2 more. We're gonna shift the array values. This is one that a lot of people got caught up on. Right. So this one is 12. Right. So this we're given an array, and what we want is, let's say that. Let's say our array is 1, 2, 3, like that. What it wants us to do is return something like this. We're shifting everything forward to the left, right? So the 2 will now be on index 0, and the 3 will now be on index 1, and then the very end of it will get the 0. So the 1 is now gone, right? So that is the result we want. We want to shift all the values to the left, and then whatever is remaining at the end, we just set it to 0, right? So we can do that with for loop. Say for var I equals to 0. I is less than array dot length, and then we're going to do I plus plus. And then every time inside of the loop, all we're doing is setting array, or if there is an array of index I, right? Because we might not have or index I plus 1 rather, right? Because if we're at the very end, we might not have this. So if array of index I plus 1 exists, then I want to set array of I to be equals to array of index I plus 1. And then at the very end, we're just going to set the very last thing in the array to be 0. So it's going to be array of index array dot length minus 1, which will be the last thing. That's going to be equal to 0. All right. So once we're done with that, let's console log our array and see if we do have everything shifted. Okay, so we're going to call this 12, and let's see if it shifts everything. There we go. 6, 5, 10, 0. Okay, so we shifted everything. There's many different ways you can do this. This is just one of the solutions, right? But I wanted you guys to see a working version of it. The last one, we're going to swap string for array negative values. So string with negs. Okay. negative values. Can't spell. All right, so function, we're given, this is 13. Yeah. We're given an array, and we're literally doing the same thing with the zero out array. But instead of zeroing it out, we are just setting that to a string instead, right? What is it, Dojo? That's what it was? Yeah. So then at the very end, we can console log our array, and we'll see that whatever negative values were there before are now replaced with Dojo. So there we go. Let's comment this guy out. There we go, right? So those are the basic 13 algorithms. Everything here is recorded so you guys can look back at it later. And also, if you want, I can send out this code in Slack if you want to take a look at it. Let's see, 1050. Let's real quickly get into the CSS part, okay? If we have any questions about this, I'll answer them later and not use up any more time. I want to be able to finish this by 11:30 to give you guys some time to work. All right, so I'm going to close this guy out.
And will those recordings be on the live forum then?
I'll Slack you the YouTube link. Yeah, so I'm going to stop this recording.